Hey everyone. So, I originally wasn't going to upload this gameplay, but I figured that it was relevant enough to something that I wanted to talk about, which was just like my opinions on people's weapon choices. I really want to talk about that because something has been actually annoying me quite a bit lately, which is basically how people seem to be treated because of the weapons that they use. I know in a previous video I used Mishlak as an example, where like the people who I really have problems with are the people who I more so have like personal problems with, where like the way they actually behave and treat other people. Uh, so people like L, people like Virium, uh, uh, those are like the only sorts of people that I really like dislike. Of course, you can if I look at someone like Mishlak, I can of course say that I dislike what he like how he plays, but I don't dislike him for that. And and I think that's a really important sort of distinction because like there are plenty of different well justified mentalities for gameplay. So I don't think I ever like completely explained mine. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to skip over to showing my stats for a bit just to show you what I mean. So feel free to just like take a good look at the stats I'm about to show. And you'll see that, a lot of the stuff that I use in Conclave, uh, you'll be able to tell that I use it quite a bit in PvE. Oberon is going to be like the single most obvious example. Actually, if you compare like the user percentage to my hours, it's actually getting pretty close to 3,000 hours worth of Oberon usage. If you look at my Ogre stats, you'll see something similar, although you can't gauge the hours as accurately. You could probably do a little something. Um, Same thing with Static Core, even though I don't use Static Core much in Conclave. You can see I use it a bunch in PvE. And Tells Boltace too. I've made a few videos where I explain why I use Tells Boltace a lot in PvE. And so a lot of the stuff I use is just stuff that I have prior experience with. I think Oberon makes for a great example when talking about this because, Oberon isn't really considered overpowered. And you can see that I used him quite a bit in both modes. So, so you can see that the reason why I would use him in PvP is just because of my experience with him. And I think I've told the story about why I started maining Oberon and stuff before. I do want to actually make a whole video about that, so I'm not gonna talk about that here. But you can see that that is definitely a reason that I use. I do consider like Warframes like Nezha to be like some of the better ones in PvP, but I use Oberon because of my experience with them mainly. Even though I might be able to use a frame like Nezha or Loki better, especially given enough time. I'm just really specialized with Oberon. And you could say something similar about Ogress, where like you could definitely see why I use Ogress a lot in PvE. I think yeah, I definitely uploaded a video where I showed Ogress's power against really high level armored enemies, and it just like completely destroys them. And it has a really wide blast radius too, so it's just a generally efficient PvE weapon. So clearly, I use it a lot in PvE just because it's a good PvE weapon, and then that carries over to PvP because I have that experience with it. Now, of course, this isn't like true for like every weapon. Where like Angstrom, for example, Angstrom is like my single favorite weapon, but the thing with Angstrom is that it's just horrible in uh, PvP. I remember someone made a video on it. I can't remember who, but I'm gonna try to remember to link that video in the description where like he shows like how humorously horrible Angstrom is, which is something that really disappoints me because like I said, it's my favorite single favorite weapon overall, and it's even kind of bad in PvE too. Like I used to make good use of it, but like over time, it's really become poor, just in comparison to other AOE secondaries. I mainly use Embolus now. Tails Boltus is another good example. Uh, just like look at my usage on that, look at the stats on it, uh, and look at my other Tonfa usage in general. Uh, you can pretty clearly see that I use it because I generally like Tonfas and Tails Boltes is like the best of them, basically. So I'm not using weapons solely because like they're overpowered. I use what I think I would do best with. Actually, tomorrow I'm going to be making a video about just like generally being serious about things. Uh, it's a whole big topic. I'm not gonna like try to summarize it here, but uh, it's gonna be sort of relevant to what I'm saying here because like I sort of treat like Warframe the same because like I do mention Warframe and like how that like plays into it, and I guess I'll like sort of explain that part um where I pretty much just like play the games I play about like as seriously as possible during the time that I'm playing them. So like with Warframe, for example, I'm going to uh, try to play my best like just about every time I play Conclave. There are a few exceptions where like sometimes I'll take it easy, but like generally speaking, I have the most fun when I'm trying my hardest. And same thing happens with in PvE too. So like a lot of you have probably seen like my huge damage charts, just like everything I do in terms of min maxing. It's so it's true for that too. You could even see in that one Minecraft video I made where like I play on no regeneration mode just for that extra challenge. It's higher difficulty than like pretty much anybody really uses. Uh, and that's like for general survival. Like I know people do a lot of no regeneration challenges, but like that's just how I play survival. That's just what I find the most enjoyable. And so I hope that people would be able to understand that like this is just how I play because it's how I enjoy playing. So with that said, though, there are two main barriers uh, that I give myself when it comes to gear decisions. So the first thing being that I don't want to abuse glitches. So I know like a fair share of glitches for Conclave and quite a bit for PvE that I just haven't tested in Conclave. And the main thing that's worth saying here is that I just don't want to use glitches like that because I think that's unfair. Anything that I see as unfair, I don't want to use. Glitches are just like the main example. But the other thing, and the thing that's really important in this context for me, uh, like the more important of the two, just for this topic, I mean, is that I don't that I want to make sure I'm improving my skill long term. So, like basically, I have like a mental list of like all the stuff that I would use, like what I would normally use and stuff. So stuff like Ogre, stuff like Dare Vandal, they all have like their own like rankings and stuff. And what I want to make sure I'm doing is I'm I'm playing in a way where I'm improving how I'm going to be playing later. So this is really relevant to stuff like static core, where the way static core is, like the way the charge attack is. Uh, I'm pretty confident that that's not going to last in its current state. It might get its AoE reduced. It might get its damage reduced. Its flight speed might be decreased or whatever. In any case, it's pretty clear that it's likely not going to stay the way it is. So, what I don't want to do is I don't want to rely, not even rely, but like I don't want to focus on using it this way because it's not going to benefit me later on. It's only going to like benefit me just for the period of time when it works, and then once it's nerfed, that's it. So I also see basically everything else this way, where like if Oberon was overpowered, I'd still want to use him in a way where I'm improving my skill for whenever he is nerfed. And Ogress also fits in this too, where I don't think Ogress is overpowered, but you know maybe people complain about it enough. Maybe it is overpowered. It doesn't really matter. You know the devs can be really weird about this stuff sometimes, like how they nerfed Tonkor basically when Tonkor was already like one of the worst weapons. So it's all so you know. Let's say Ogress is nerfed or whatever. You know, I don't expect it to be nerfed, so I just use it however I want. But you could often see that you know that I do focus on hitting direct shots with it oftentimes, and you can also see this with something like Tel's Boltes too, where like I try to directly slide into people where I don't always you know get to do that, but you know I try to use the passive without like completely abusing it, except in like certain instances. But even like teleporters, I just don't use like a whole lot. So that's just my general mentality, which you know I know like some people may like it, some people may hate it, but what I really just hope is that people can understand and accept it. Uh, because you know I think you know this is good reason to use what I use, and you know that's basically that until like I'm convinced otherwise. In the same way, as I think I've previously said, I do dislike what you know certain other players use, but at the same time, I think there should be like a degree of understanding that that I have to give people. Also, I think it should be made really clear that the solution to overpowered weapons isn't to like tease players out of using them or to like bad talk them out of using them, but it's really to get them to not be overpowered. You know, this is the sort of stuff that you know is supposed to be reported to D. It's supposed to just be put to their attention. Where like you can't expect everybody to not use overpowered stuff, but what you can expect is for this overpowered stuff to be adjusted to actually be something more fair. And it's not like it doesn't happen. It's happened with plenty of weapons that have been overpowered over some of the years of Conclave. So people can't act like that this doesn't happen. People just need to actually, you know, do more to make it happen sooner. And uh, that's basically that. You know, make sure or that you know the reason why it's overpowered. You know how it's used. Make sure that's known, and that's where we would get the good. That's where we would get the best results, not by just being bad to people who use them.